Yo, and welcome to the very first episode of the SandLab. This is going to be the strength and conditioning arm of SANDCAST Productions. Try and Travis have given me a little space to kind of give a little bit of a inside peek on what the strength and conditioning, fitness, gym, body mechanics side of beach volleyball kind of entails, especially from my end as a coach that works with professional players. So what this is going to be is essentially a kind of mini cast series. My goal is just to have a small 10-15 minute runtime on the episodes, and I'm just going to try to pick one topic that is relevant, is fun, something that everybody can get out of from the lowest levels up to the professional level as well. So just sharing some basic high and low level information for all players. That's kind of my superpower, is taking information in regards to some of the scientific literature, which there's not a lot out there for the sand surface. I'll get more into that. And then some of these classic and decently complex strength and conditioning training principles that high-level coaches use, and just kind of dumbing all of that down a bit and making it easy to explain, but also funneling it into our awesome sport in beach volleyball and the surface that we play on, which is unique and is, of course, sand. So, like I said, kind of just digging into the space of what you'll kind of do potentially in the gym, or what I do. Like I said, mechanics on the court as far as what's happening. I'll be dealing with that topic today on one aspect. Even food, recovery, how the sand affects our muscles, workload. All of these things are open season in regards to some potential future episodes. So, not going to be any set timetable. We'll drop them as I'm able to get into the booth and talk for a few minutes. But just to kind of recap, my name is Nathan Michaels. I am basically a mostly science-based meathead personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach based in Los Angeles, Southern California. I've been training for 13, 14 years. Been on the beach side for the last 3 years, and had my very first professional client, old Travis Mewhirter, if you know that guy. Ugh. But yeah, so that's where my journey started, was with that guy into the beach world. So just saw some things that he was doing that I thought was a little antiquated. And, I didn't know what needed to be improved, but it was stuff that was based around, classic sport training and hard surface court training. And I'm like, I don't know what needs to be different for beach volleyball, but I'm pretty sure something could be a little more specific. So meeting him, getting into beach volleyball myself again after a long absence, moving to the state and the beautiful beaches that we have here. I just started digging around, man, pun intended. So this podcast mini cast series is going to be for you guys, the beach volleyball community. Like I said, I do want it to be kind of for everybody. Some things we'll be getting into the weeds on some of the science and kinematics and mechanics and stuff, what the research says on some things. But I always want to have some cut and dry takeaways for you guys at the end of each episode, that anybody could take and use in their own journey, whatever level you may be at. So, and if we get, people like it, I'm happy to potentially take some topic requests, Q&A, potentially some of those things. But we'll see what happens. So, taking this space where I ramble about something I love is also something that was a kind of appeal to me. So, here we are. Today, the topic is going to be attack mechanics. And not so much having to do with how to hit the ball. That's going to be a separate conversation potentially. But how we want to do our approach from a body standpoint, like what's going to be happening with the body in regards to how we approach the four-step, get into our jump angles, and then obviously get off the sand. what kind of potentially could be optimal for that. So that's going to be the main topic. But before we kind of get into that, I do want to kind of take today's episode, which will make it a little bit longer than normal, but just to kind of get into the differences that we have on this surface. This is a very, very unique opportunity we have on this sport to, nobody else has what we have. And I think that's kind of cool. Does it technically make us all less athletic than if we were on, say, grass or an indoor basketball court? 1,000%. But, I mean, I think that's interesting to somebody like me because there's not a whole lot of just well-known information in the strength and conditioning world for coaches that it's kind of left an open door for people like myself that not necessarily in the collegiate system, not working with professional beach federations. I've had some conversations with some of those people, and it's been amazing. But it's still just kind of a new sport and new topic in regards to getting some high-level information. We don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars invested in athletes that, soccer, football, basketball, American football, rugby, even those sports, when they have that kind of income, they get all the information. They get all the science literature thrown their way and can learn a lot of cool things, but not so much for us. So if we kind of think about sand as a surface, we'll kind of cover some of these obvious things. We know that it's very unstable. It's not a surface that is hard, and so it shifts. It takes a second to kind of solidify under your feet each step, each sprint, jump, etc. that you do. So with that comes a few things. One of which is you don't get any of the lovely ground reaction forces or elastic energy storage into your muscles and tendons that you get from a hard surface. Every time you take a step on hard ground, you put energy into the ground gives energy back. That does not happen on sand. You step in sand, you're just like straight into the mush until it finally packs, and then you have a little bit of stability. But even as soon as you start moving again, so does the sand. So it's just a very unstable surface. So we don't get to take advantage of the elastic properties that we can use with our muscles and especially our tendons that you get on hard surfaces. Somebody who is very bouncy, think about a Michael Jordan type athlete, their tendon storage and release is straight up a superpower. That's something that's just inherent in their DNA. But you put Michael Jordan on the sand, he'll still be Michael Jordan, but he's not going to be that Michael Jordan. The sand is kind of an equalizer to a point for people that have a lot of genetic disposition towards their tendon energy storage and release. But for people that are a little bit more muscular based, think somebody like a LeBron James from the NBA. He's more of a power jumper. That is somebody who could potentially have a little bit more success on being a high-level athlete on sand. So muscles are going to be something that's extremely important. But getting back on topic in regards to kind of sand as a surface, so our ground contact times, or how long it takes us to get into jump position and then finally take off, is going to be much longer. So that's something that we have to think about in regards to how we train, especially on if you're trying to do some type of plyometrics, jump drills, etc. Short contact time stuff like what sprinters or hard surface athletes do, not going to be the best idea for us. Sand requires deeper joint angles. That's going to be something that I really, really have leaned into once I saw that from a couple of studies. It's kind of obvious if you watch, but it's just nice to kind of have that redundant literature saying, yeah, well, somebody that jumps on hard surface, they get this low. Somebody jumps on sand, they're getting another 20 or 10, 20, 30 degrees deeper in their knees and their hips, and ankles to a point. And speaking of ankles, ankle muscles, calves, etc., they become kind of more of a stabilizer versus a propulsor. So they're not really working with the tendon, especially the Achilles tendon, to kind of contract, create that isometric muscle contraction, and then the tendon can then do the stretching. And when that tendon stretches, it's pliable and stiff, the good stiff, athletic stiff. You can store a lot of energy in there. So calves don't really get to do a whole lot except stabilize the ankle. So it is important, but that takes away one of the propulsors that we typically have on hard surface. Something I do lean into as well is that with deeper joint angles, if you're familiar with, your typical back squatting, you're like, if you get deeper, you get more glute recruitment. It can become a little bit more of a glute exercise if you get deep into, any squatting pattern, really. So glutes get to play a little bit more of a propulsive role. And then, of course, king is going to be our knee extensors or quads. They're going to be basically quads are life is kind of how I look at it now these days. Especially with the last year, I've made a few changes. And that's kind of the cool thing is because it is so variable in regards to where, the data that I'm learning, along with talking to other coaches and even skills coaches, and just kind of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, jump data numbers. I've changed my mind on a few things, even just in this short 2 or 3 years. So that's something you got to be careful of. People that are in any industry is, be open to change, basically. Don't try to hold on to anything too tight. And then one of the last things is going to be that I've also kind of found to be most likely important. This is more of a hypothesis, but so as you say, you're getting ready to jump, and you finally get both feet into the sand. As it shifts and packs, you're just sinking the whole time, hopefully into your deeper joint angles as well. Body is sinking, joints are sinking deeper, and then at some point, that sand is finally going to pack and become that, whatever you want to call it, springboard, which is not springy, but that's the term I've heard thrown around. But just it becomes a little more packed so that you can actually push off of it. And at that instantaneous moment, it is my hypothesis that what we kind of consider braking forces, I'll break the jump down here shortly, but your ability to slow down as you descend on the eccentric portion of a jump, I think is ridiculously important. And when I've improved people's braking forces and their ability to brake, typically we get some good things happening in regards to that. And they feel better on the sand, they feel more athletic. So just the ability to, even think about a defender chasing a high line, you're hopefully evenly balanced, 50-50, but as soon as you're like, all right, there's ball, I need to go get ball, you start driving off that initial whichever leg you're pushing off of. Same thing, that sand's going to shift. As soon as it hits, boom, you've got to be able to put the brakes on and then immediately start your concentric phase or propulsor phase. So it kind of goes along with everything. So yeah, instantaneous braking force is required once that sand finally does settle. So that's a lot. And those are just kind of my big points. I had to cut some fat on my notes on what I wanted to get into on that. But to continue on kind of the scientific side, this gentleman by the name of George Giatsis, totally said that wrong. I think he's Greek. But this man is doing the Lord's work for beach volleyball. He's done 4 different studies that I found in regards to sand, jumping on sand, different types, looking at different things. And like I said, some of the things were obvious and they reiterate kind of what I was already thinking. But once again, it's just nice to have like actual scientists, researchers, collegiate level people kind of confirm these things. But a couple other cool things that I noticed or picked out. In one study, it was led by combination players, so female athletes that were playing indoor and beach, which is tough because you don't get to like kind of maximize your athletic traits for one surface. So I wouldn't recommend that. Pick one or the other if you can. If you're obviously learning both and you're not sure yet, no big deal. But once you decide to kind of take that next level, then you're gonna need to pick one. And if not, just understand, especially if you've been on sand for a while, going back onto hard surface, you're going to want to be easy on upping the workload on that. Don't just jump into max jumps 5 days a week on hard surface. Bad things are going to happen. I tell my players to be careful when they go play in sand tournaments. If there's big tournaments coming up, I'm like, stay away from a pickleball court, basketball court, tennis court. They don't always listen, but, it's my job to put it out there. If they want to catch that touchdown pass with that information, that's up to them. If they want to fumble, also up to them. But, so anyway, I get distracted. But so we had combination athletes, indoor and beach. And what we saw was on these particular CMJ counter movement jumps, up, down jumps, just your normal stuff, men lost about 10% of their vertical on sand versus indoor or hard surface rigid, and women lost about 13%. That's probably going to be greater in a few other things, depending on the kind of jump. The kind of sand is also important. That was cool. Another study in 2024 by Neto and others found that coarse sand is a faster playing surface, essentially, versus fine sand. And then if you have deep, fine sand, Hermosa Beach, Southern California, and a couple other beaches around the world. There's one in Australia that is, in theory, deeper. But it's going to be slower, so you're not going to jump as high and move as fast on fine sand. So probably pretty easy to think about. Fine sand is just going to shift just a little bit more than coarse sand. And so as it's shifting further and more, it takes you longer to get to that packed moment. And at that point, you're just going to have lost even more energy on your plant, essentially. And at that point, you don't move as fast or jump as high. So if you walk into a tournament and the sand is pretty coarse, hopefully it's not concrete underneath it, that's another conversation, then just know, hey, this is going to be a fun, jumpy sand, and let's hope your knees are ready for it, and back, and shoulders when you Superman dive. I digress. If you can't tell, I pay attention to trying to keep my athletes healthy any way I can. So that was one thing. So the very fine sand, you'll play a little faster. If you kind of look at these two different jumps, what they did, one was a squat jump and one was a counter movement jump. Counter movement jump, like I said, is your typical pretend there's a tree branch and you're going to, load, go down, and then jump as high as you can to try to touch it. That's essentially counter movement. You would go hands on hips if you're on force plates, but besides that, it's down, up. And then a squat jump is just like it sounds. You squat first, and then you hold. You lose all your momentum or your elastic energy. And then from there, jump as high as you can using only your concentric force. So what they found when they tested those two jumps on a sand surface was that the difference was greater on sand, aka the jumps were a lot further apart, aka counter movement you jumped pretty high, and then your squat jump you didn't go anywhere, right? So on hard surface, even if you're just holding that squat position, as soon as you start jumping, you're still putting that force down into the earth. It gives you that return ground reaction force. So you can still get a pretty powerful elastic jump, even with no eccentric loading that you would have. So on hard surface, those two jumps were a lot closer and similar. So kind of, if you want to put it in context, a block jump that you're a hide and seek, maybe you're a slightly undersized blocker, and you go hands all the way to the sand, and then you hold for a second, and then explode, and, kind of hide until you put your block up for whatever angle you're going to be trying to take away. Good luck to those guys, because they are extremely well versed, especially if they jump well. Think Brandy from Team Canada in the international game. Um, she's one of the best, obviously, but she does that hide and seek, so she gives up all momentum. Something called the stretch shortening cycle that I'll get into shortly. That is essentially your muscles being a rubber band. She gives all that up and just jumps with purely concentric power and can still fly. So that is impressive. So for all of my hand to sand jumpers out there, um, so that was just something that was interesting. Combining, was seeing that those two jumps were further away. Like CMJ, you can get here, and then squat jump, you're just like nothing. Let's see. And then when they did a drop jump, which is you just, if you've done dead jumps or drop jumps at some point in your life. If not, basically you just step off of surface that is elevated 12, 16, 24, 30 inches if you're really advanced, and you just fall to the ground and then jump. Maybe you're jumping for max height. Maybe you're jumping more for speed. Either way, we found that those jumps on hard court obviously was much higher because you get to use all the elastic energy. And then on sand, it was roughly 20% less, give or take, for that particular group. So it's just, there's a lot of interesting things that have been found, but there's still so much more to kind of figure out. One of the things I would like to know is kind of if you're able to put, EMG pads on everybody's muscles and perform a few jumps and kind of see what order muscles fire in. When they jump on sand, what the percentage of how much force is kind of created. So, like, what muscles contribute the most to the jump. Obviously, we're going to know it's quads, but, like, specifically which quads, because there's 4 of them, I think. And so, just as an example, there's still quite a few things that we haven't found yet. But hopefully our man George keeps doing the work and continues on, because I am loving it and using it. Let's see, a couple bonus takeaways from that before I move on to attack mechanics. So the stretch shortening cycle, SSC, in muscles is, like I said, a rubber band effect. So if you're able to relax in the down part of your jump really well, aka go down fast, so you're not holding tension. So think about an arm swing. If you have a loose arm, it's like a whip. If you tense up, it's going to be like a club, and it's going to move slower. Kind of the same idea with muscles in general. So if you're able to relax your legs really well, move down with gravity very fast, then you get this nice stretch action happening with your muscles, to keep it simple. And then you can use that to help contribute a little bit of extra force on the way up. So that is an attribute that you can train. Okay, so that is essentially practice working on how fast you can jump out of deep angles. So that's a caveat. Anybody that goes short angles, which is the angles you would use on hard court, you use those, everybody can jump pretty quick. But can you get deep into sand angles in your knees, hips, and ankles and still jump fast, powerful, and not lose a whole bunch of juice? And then you can also going to need quite a bit of strength as well. That's going to become a huge player as well. So stretch shortening cycle, the muscles, is something that I do try to train with my athletes, as well as training the muscles that they'll need the prerequisite strength to put that to use if they are able to do that. So ability to relax is important. And then finally, most of these studies, especially the early studies, a couple in the early 2000s, were like, sand is great for rehab, and it's great for getting back into a workload from the off season and preseason. But if you want to maximize athleticism, don't do it then. So that was essentially what sand was used for. The first few studies that was on it was just kind of more in a return to play rehab context, which is great. But we are here to jump as high as we can and hit as hard as we can on this unique surface. So that is a background a bit on kind of what's happening with the sand from a mechanical standpoint, from the scientific literature. Once again, one last hat tip to George. And that takes us to the main topic of the day is attack mechanics on your max 4-step approach, or a 3-step, depending on what you prefer to do. I prefer 4. I just think it gives you more leeway. But if you're freaking tall, then 3-step is great. Or if you come from indoor and that's just what you love. So when it comes to attack mechanics, you can kind of dumb it down to 2 schools of thought or coaching. One is, as you come in for your attack, you give a little vertical hop, and then that allows you to then come down onto the sand and give a little stomp, which then, in theory, packs the sand and gives you that springboard to then jump your max jump off. All right, so that's, you come in, 1, 2, push, give a little hop, land to the sand, try to pack it down, maybe even stomp a little bit, hopefully not stomp too hard, and then try to max jump from there. All right, so that's one. And then the other is not hop, jump, basically anything else. So I fall into the latter side, and I will, of course, explain why. So the biggest thing is when you use that hop, you lose all acceleration. It's basically almost all gone. What you have essentially done is think about a skier, maybe at the X Games, that's going down the biggest ramp, and they're going to go for a, freaking 300-yard jump into the air off this massive ramp. So the whole time they're coming down that ramp, they are creating a faster speed. They're accelerating. And if you want to think about what that hop does, think about putting a mogul, or if you're not familiar with skiing, which I don't ski, but a mogul or a speed bump just right before you get into the up part of the ramp. Well, that mogul or speed bump is definitely going to slow you down. It's not going to let you hit max velocity off the end of the jump ramp. And that's essentially what's happening when you give a hop, is you just decided to give up all acceleration and kind of channel it into something that may give you more control, which is definitely a solid reason to do the hop, but it will not give you any extra acceleration that you can then transition into verticality. So that's kind of the way I look at it is, volleyball is a very variable sport. We take off from many different angles, trajectories, due to the environment. Indoor, if you run this one set, if you have a great setter, that ball is going to be in the same spot within inches every single time. In beach, not so much, man. We know you got the wind, you got different type of setters, different types of sand. Where the hell is the sun? And that's what one of the coolest things about our sports, obviously, is we play in the elements and in some amazing locations. But so this is primarily speaking on when you're in system, you're not playing wind ball, and you get to attack with your max effort. That is when what we're going to get into is going to be important, and that's just going to be the ability to slow to fast, which is something that's very common and taught, but taking that a step further, and on your last 2 steps, really speeding up with a full straight-legged push. So think about after you take your second step, that's your push leg into the final 3, 4, getting a nice huge accelerative boost during that, and then ending in some way. I'll give you the 3 different ways, getting into some deeper joint angles that we talked about that is optimal for getting your max jump on sand. So kind of what those will be is that you can, I want to make sure I say these 3 right. Actually, sorry, let me get back into so kind of the benefits of the no hop is you're going to obviously have a faster and smoother approach. Your step close is going to have a lot more range. So if you get left or hung inside or outside, you can chase down a slightly bad set a little bit easier. It's going to look way more aggressive to the defense every time if you come in with that huge accelerative step close. Of course, you will jump higher. It will indirectly, or actually directly, give you a bigger back arm swing as far as your two arms traveling up behind you if you have that technique down. And then the momentum from that back arm swing can also transition nicely into getting a more open trunk rotation. If you're familiar with driving your same side hip or butt forward as you draw to create that stretch across the chest. If you're familiar with that, the big back arm swing easily carries that trunk into that rotation. So it just kind of, all of that energy just goes into the very exact places that you want it to create all these bonus effects that you kind of have to become more mechanical when you do the hop approach. And then the caveat is, of course, I'm speaking about players that are, giving full attacks. Maybe don't, bounce a ball straight down. But if you're strong enough to have the approach, to have some type of jump, some decent arm swing, we're not talking about juniors or people new to the sport. Once you've kind of got a little bit of timing and you have a little bit of natural verticality, this is where this comes into play. So obviously you can still attack similarly if you're not somebody who can hit a down ball, but mainly this max attack stuff is going to be for the people that, or you've gotten to the level where you can spike a volleyball, right? So to perform a efficient approach, there's kind of 3 different ways that I found. The third way is only been the last few months that I noticed. So once again, I am completely open. It kind of shocked my brain, but I was like, you know what? I thought about it, and I'm like, that actually works too. And then once you see who I saw it from, you'll be like, oh, okay. But the first one is, say you're starting at your approach, you're in your batter's box, whatever you want to call it, before you take your first step. One way is to just literally sink down into your knees until you feel your quads and kind of hips kind of turn on. And at that point, you've almost already kind of lowered yourself into your deep angle jumping position. You have a very short distance to travel downward before you get to your jump at that point. So just starting low and then during your fourth step. So that's one way. The next way is, obviously, you can start a little taller. You're more chill, you're relaxed, kind of lean forward, take your first step on center contact or whenever your particular cue is with your partner. And then as you go through your fourth step, you slowly sink down until right before you jump. And so you get to your deeper angle through the transition of the 4 steps. And then the last one is actually a bit of a hybrid. So if you're familiar with the women's international game, there's a player from Italy by the name of Valentina Gottardi, one of the more athletic players in our sport for sure. There's a few clips in slow motion that I saw where she does kind of a hybrid. It was really interesting, and it just kind of blew my mind. And like I said, I had to sit with it because my ego was like, no, you can't do that. You can't hop. But she hops. But here's how she does it. She actually gets a full push from her push-off leg from step 2. She gets that full extension when she's doing a max approach. And then she does a mini hop. But as she does so, she's actually still traveling downward. She kind of tucks her feet a little bit under her, just a skosh, or you can think about it like that. And then by the time she hits the sand with both legs, she's already in her deep jump angles. And she's kept her acceleration. She has not lost any of those. She hasn't bled any acceleration out. And it's still smooth, slow to fast, hits that bottom point, and then is obviously able to absolutely just explode out of the sand. So having a little mini hop where you do kind of land into your max jump angle, that works. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it, but now that I've seen that, I've actually seen a couple other players do something similar. So if that's the thing, main thing I'm looking for is hips getting lower throughout the process, not losing acceleration, particularly in steps 2, 3, and 4. And then are you balanced in your what should be your pretty decently deep jump angles, and it depends on your bone structure as well. I have seen other people who have like extremely long femurs or etc., whatever it may be, and their angles are just going to be different. That's just normal with dealing with tall athletes. They're all shaped in very different ways. So their version of their deep jump angles, as long as they're getting to those, then yeah, that's what we're looking for. So that's kind of the three ways that you can do the non-hop jump approach. I don't really have a name for it. I'm not trying to peg a name on it. That's for people in a higher pay grade than I am. So kind of that's about it. So the final takeaways is get into your deep angles. Don't lose any acceleration. But to get there, just understand that you need to have the prerequisite mobility. So if you have tight ankles, tight hips, knees that are cranky, all of that is potentially holding you back just from getting into those angles. And then if you're Gumby already, but you're weak, particularly in the quads and the glutes, to a point, then it's not going to go quite as well. And then finally, if you're just a bit stiff, you don't know how to kind of relax the muscles quickly and just kind of fall freely at a fast tempo, that is going to be something that you'll want to try to improve upon to kind of maximize. And then lastly would be just make sure your thoracic spine can extend. We want to be able to get into these deep angles, but these deep angles are going to naturally pull your chest down. So you want to make sure that at least you're able to still see the ball above you, because, see ball, hit ball hard, and you need it for timing. So thoracic extension, not just being a stiff board, something that could also hold you back a little bit as well. So, and that brings us to kind of the take-homes. So what's a couple of ways just to kind of improve getting stronger in those deep angles? One is super simple. I mean, actually, they're all pretty simple. I'll give you 3 different exercises or variations that you can kind of take home. The first one is going to be just a knee health exercise as well, but obviously it is a major strength exercise because, and you can Google all of these, but the isometric split squat, so essentially a kind of like moderately spaced lunge position, hold a couple of weights, have a bar in your back, whatever it may be. The goal would be long-term is to try to get to where you can have your knee roughly 1 inch off the ground, your back knee, and you should be able to hold at least between half your body weight up to 1 times your body weight for 30 seconds. If you can do that, you'll have a pretty solid base on being comfortable at deeper angles. It'll also help your passing as well. When you take a big side step and you're like, I've got to get deep to pass this, I don't really want to go to the ground, so it can help with that as well. So hold that isometric squat, 0.5 times body weight up to 1 times body weight, at least 30 seconds. That's one way to just start getting comfortable and getting strong in those deep angles. And it's great for your patellar and quad tendons as well. Another way is just kind of a drop catch. That's just a term for hold a weight, say in goblet position, and then just let your feet kind of come off the ground and just fall as if you're going to get into a jump, but you're just going to do the fall part. So just think a goblet squat where you're just going to maybe go up onto your toes and then fall as fast as you can into a deep angle. If you can land close to parallel and stick it with something that's going to be, this one's not going to be heavy, probably a quarter up to 0.5 times your body weight, something around there. And you can fall fast and stick, and when you stick, you don't move at all. That's going to be some of the braking forces that you have access to. If you fall kind of slow, then that's going to be something where you just want to start working on that and see how fast you can start improving that ability from the eccentric portion of the jump, which is just the fall. So you have a nice chunky weight or moderately heavy weight that can help pull you down along with gravity. Learn how to use that and almost pull yourself while staying relaxed into that deep angle. And then the last one is going to be just some eccentric work. Say you're doing some single leg squats to bench. So you just find a weight or a height that's something around your knee height. Do a single leg squat. Tap your bum on it. If you can control that 5 or 6 seconds up and 5 or 6 seconds down, you don't even need to add weight. That's a pretty solid start. And I mean it, like 5, 4, 3, 2. That tempo, controlling the whole way, and then even on the way up, 5, 4, 3, 2. That tempo. If you have that kind of control into that deeper angle, and you can do the same thing, on back squats, leg press, trap bar stuff, just whatever squat pattern. But just show yourself that you have complete control through the entire range of motion. That is a pretty solid sign that you're ready to, if you're not getting into deeper angles or comfortable down there. That's some of the prerequisites you can have and start working on your approach at that point. Because if you don't have these things, you can practice all you want and you're going to have limited success. So that's where people like me kind of like figure this stuff out and tell you guys. So you're like, I want to jump higher. Cool. Do these things in the gym, practice this technique. And skills coaches may tell you in different terms some of the same things. Maybe they're different things. I look at the sport through the lens of a strength and conditioning coach. So mechanics don't lie for the most part. So you always need to be open, because coach may say this and I see this, and then you kind of meld. You find the middle ground where the athlete can have their most success, because that's what matters is if the athlete feels healthy, strong on the sand, and feels confident in their skills from their skills coaches and their practice, etc., then that's what makes it fun. We want to have people to be able to be healthy, be recovered, and be fresh, and mentally be good, and just have fun and maximize. And then if you're like me, who just obsess with the details, then yeah, you can go down this like 3-year arm attack or arm swing journey that I'm on currently. Just to have the perfect arm swing before all of my vertical completely disappears with Father Time's grace. So that's the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. This is one of hopefully more than one. Once again, thanks to the SANDCAST boys for having me. Help them out by, doing the usual stuff. Like, click, subscribe to their channel. We love what they do. I'm a fan. I watch. And that's all I got. Let me know what you think. Do some comments. I'll keep my ego out of it and answer. And let's see what we can learn in the SandLab. Catch you next time. Peace.